Welcome to Voices, a library lecture series. My name is Amira Aftab, and I'm the student representative on the Voices Committee. We would like to begin with an acknowledgement that we are gathered on the sacred homelands of the Mohicaniac or Mohican people, who are the stewards of this land. Today, the community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Munsee Mohican Nation. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors past and present. Voices presents speakers on timely and enduring issues each semester to broaden and enrich the scope of studies at Hudson Valley Community College. Please fill out the surveys which are being passed around. They help us to inform our future programming. Today, Voices presents Dr. Erin Christopher-Sisk. Erin Christopher-Sisk, Ph.D., founder and board member of Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga, THS, will discuss fostering the human-horse connection. A sanctuary for retired racehorses, THS offers therapy opportunities for people to interact with these amazing animals to promote wellness. And with that, please welcome Dr. Erin Christopher-Sisk.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is certainly one of my favorite topics to talk about, is this charity organization and how horses help humans through the bonding process. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay. So these are the things that we're going to talk about throughout my segment today. I'm going to share with you a little bit about who we are, who I am, and what we do at Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. I'm also going to talk about the ways in which equine-assisted mental health therapy is believed to help people. I will share with you the research that supports the effectiveness of equine-assisted mental health therapy, and also the ingredients or the things that we know so far through research on what goes into that horse-human bond. So first I'll start with a little bit about me and how Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga sort of came to be. We are a charity organization that has two primary missions. We rescue retired racehorses, primarily horses that come from their racing career and have significant injuries that prevent them from being able to be ridden after their racing career is done. Many horses, after they're done racing, are able to be retrained to be a pleasure horse or adopted by somebody who, enjoys equestrian activities. There's also a lot of horses that are severely injured, permanently injured, after their racing career is done. And it might surprise some folks who are not up on horse information. Horses can live 25, 30 years. In fact, we just had our most senior rescue horse pass away just a couple of weeks ago, and she was 35 years old. So if you consider that horses race maybe for the first 3 or 4 years of their life, possibly, depending on the industry, they might race until they're 7. There's a lot of life to live after their racing days are done. So with that, if a horse is severely injured, they don't really have many options after that career has ended. And that's where a lot of really tough situations come to be for retired racehorses. If they have permanent injuries that don't allow them sort of a typical aftercare career of riding, they often are unwanted because they're expensive to keep. They're particularly expensive, pets, and you need land. You can't really, despite some of the commercials, stick your horse in your backyard if you live in the city. So there's barriers to taking a horse despite somebody's, potential love of the animal. So a lot of horses, unfortunately, end up in neglect situations and most the grim circumstances slaughter. So that's why we do what we do in part. The other piece, I am a psychologist by trade and have owned a private practice in Saratoga Springs for almost 20 years now. The other piece of what we do is we train horses to become therapy animals. And so they then have a job, they have a purpose despite their injuries to help people with their mental health. So I'm going to talk to you more about all of that today, and I'm also going to share with you just a video that kind of gives you an overview of what we do at Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga.
I am Dr. Erin Christopher-Sisk, the co-founder of Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. We founded the organization in 2018. Through the charity organization, we are able to rescue...
Oops, sorry. Did not mean to do that. Getting a little crazy with the clicker. Just don't want to blast you all out.
I am Dr. Erin Christopher-Sisk, the co-founder of Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga.
Is that okay?
We founded the organization in 2018. Through the charity organization, we are able to rescue horses that are retiring from racing that have permanent disabilities, ones that keep them from being able to be ridden in their day-to-day lives. So that really leaves them in a place where they are most vulnerable to ending up in neglectful situations or even worse, slaughter. Our farm is a lifelong sanctuary for our horses. The horses that we rescue live out the remainder of their lives with us, and they become trained to be mental health therapists. Every day they are working with people in our community who struggle with mental health issues. That might be a child who's been abused. It might be a child that's been bullied. It might be a family that's struggling with some sort of major loss. It also might be a veteran that's been to combat and has come home with significant trauma. And the horses work to aid in their healing in a very powerful way. We also offer community-based programs that are focused on supporting individuals in a variety of ways, helping them feel empowered, helping them with self-discovery, helping them just improve feelings about themselves. And we do that through community events. We offer them time with the horses that is not mental health therapy based. Instead, it is a recreational activity. So your donations, your financial support goes not only to the daily upkeep of the horses, but to improving the lives of individuals in our community. We work very hard to offer scholarship opportunities for people to receive mental health therapy that they need, but who are not otherwise able to afford it. There are many veterans without the financial capabilities of getting this type of care, and they need it. There are many children and families in our community that need mental health care and don't have the financial resources to do so. Funding also supports our staff and the continual development of our volunteer program. If you'd like to join us in our mission of supporting these incredible animals and helping people within our community, please go to our website at thsaratoga.org for more information. We hope that you will join us at the farm to experience for yourself the healing benefits of our horses.
So it's just a little bit about our program and about what we do. You're going to hear some very technical terms, I guess is the best way to put it. throughout my discussion. And so I wanted to go over those first and foremost so that everybody kind of understands where the field is at. Equine-assisted mental health therapy is what we refer to as what we do when we're combining a horse and a person with mental health struggles, and we're facilitating that connection in order to help them heal. The field is very, very new, and so because of that, our terminology is not really all on the same page just yet. So you will hear and see in some of the studies that I mention and some of the research that we talk about, you'll hear the same equine-assisted mental health therapy called equine-assisted therapy. And you also will hear it called equine therapy. A different sort of version of this that doesn't have the mental health treatment component is equine facilitated learning. And that still often leaves people feeling pretty good. However, it doesn't have a specific mental health treatment goal to the interactions that occur. So you're going to see those acronyms, EAT, ET, EAMHT, and so forth throughout the talk. And I just wanted folks to know that's it's part of the development process of the field, and it pretty much means the same thing. We're referring to the same process. So how does equine-assisted mental health therapy help people? So first and foremost, if anybody has ever been in the presence of a horse, they are very large and powerful. And so just being around them kind of makes you check yourself and your own environment and become more self-aware. So that is one of the pieces that is a component to the therapeutic process that just sort of naturally happens when you're with a horse. Self-awareness and environmental awareness. Someone may come to equine-assisted mental health therapy with a fear of horses even. And in the process of learning to connect with a horse and developing that bond, a sense of increased self-confidence and self-efficacy really develops, because imagining yourself conquering a fear of something that is 1,200 pounds, and potentially you can't, naturally have a discussion with them about where they're going and what they're doing, it really does create a boost in self-confidence. The other component to the equine-assisted mental health therapy can be boundary setting. Just a horse's size and their power, and they use their body language or their body movements to communicate with us. Naturally, when you're in their space, requires a human to set their own boundaries physically and sometimes emotionally with the horse. And so learning how to do that then also transposes into day-to-day life, where maybe an individual has difficulty setting boundaries with people in their world. So it's a teachable skill in that moment that then can translate into daily life. And then communication skill development is another area, and I guess I should say equine-assisted mental health therapy isn't limited to these pieces, but these are things that are commonly achieved in the process. Communication, learning to communicate with a horse who does not speak English, but you still can communicate with through nonverbal communication, energy exchange, and some things that we will talk about, as we move through the program. That is a whole nother level of communication that, again, also translates into day-to-day life when you are trying to communicate on an impactful level with your peers, with your colleagues, your family, or whoever. So there's developing evidence to support the effectiveness of this form of mental health therapy. And so I thought I would highlight a few studies that have come out that do support what we're doing. For many years, people just knew sort of that, being around a horse made them feel good. And so now we're starting to really drill into why does this process work and what is it about that horse-human connection that makes it feel good. So a study out of Columbia University, I'm going to talk about two of them actually that have been really important in our field. The first was the development of a standardized treatment protocol for individuals, veterans specifically, with post-traumatic stress disorder using equine-assisted therapy. So a group of experts in trauma treatment and equine-assisted therapy got together and they developed this 8-week protocol for working with veterans who have severe trauma. And it really was the first time that they put anything, anybody put anything concretely together like that. Prior to that, there's just a lot of different approaches to doing this type of therapy and this type of work. And this one is very clear, week 1 you do this, week 2 you do that. And that then helps people replicate that with other groups. So it was really a really groundbreaking study. They used this protocol with a group of veterans and found that there was a treatment effect. There was a decrease in trauma symptoms as well as a decrease in depressive symptoms from the time they started to the time that they ended the treatment. So that was an exciting development in the field. The next exciting development was some of the same researchers took it a step further, and they did this, used this whole protocol again, but they did a longer-term study, and they actually studied the changes in the brain of the veterans who participated. So they did things like fMRIs, diffusion tensor imaging, to track potential changes in the participants' brains. And so they had 19 veterans. They did the 8-week group therapy, and they did these, MRI assessments before and afterwards. And sure enough, they found some pretty exciting details and changes. There was a significant increase in the caudate functional connectivity and also a reduction in gray matter of the thalamus and the caudate. And so those are areas of the brain that are associated with, and changes that are associated with, reduction in trauma symptoms. So again, it was the first time that they could actually track the changes in the brain that occurred based on this form of treatment. Another interesting study, and then I will move on from the research piece, but given this is a new field, now that there's some research out there that's supporting it, it's exciting for those of us that do this kind of work. A different group of researchers conducted a study on a different equine facilitated learning program, and they were studying the hypothalamic, it's a mouthful, pituitary adrenal axis. And this was in a group of 5th through 8th graders. So they were testing their cortisol levels through their saliva. And this group of adolescents, they were hoping to find that there was some sort of preventative effect with this treatment. Cortisol levels are tied to the development of mental health issues, and so they were looking to see if there were changes in the cortisol levels that would support a prevention component to the development of those mental health issues in these preteens and teens. So the results did show a moderate lowering effect on the average daily cortisol levels of the teens in the program. So again, very hopeful results. I should say with those studies, there's so much more that's needed. And so who knows, maybe this talk will inspire somebody in the group to do some research as you move through your academic career. But there's lots more work to be done to really understand what's going on here. The pieces that I talked to you about moving forward are components of what we know, but there's a lot more that we need to learn still. So Winston Churchill, forever ago, said there's something about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of a man. And for those that do this kind of work or people who like to hang around horses, they do know that that is the case. But again, we have not really known why or how that even occurs. So some questions come up like, does this really exist? Is there something truly going on there? How do we know? And so research has continued to, sort of look at the different changes that occur in humans and horses when they get together. So the horse-human bond, I'm going to talk about in a little more detail these different components that we have learned so far. There's characteristics of a horse that are unique in a way that impacts us as people. The equine brain also has some specific components to it that helps with that bond or connection. The magnetic field surrounding the equine heart actually has a powerful component to the horse-human bond that we'll talk about. There is a reciprocal impact between a horse and a person on their heart rate variability. And lastly, they found some reciprocal impacts on the brainwave patterns between a horse and a human. I'm going to talk about that a little bit further. So a horse is a prey animal. And if you think about what that means in the wild, so if you were out in Montana, and you saw, a wild herd of horses, they are, despite being very large creatures, they're herbivores, so they spend most of their day eating, basically, grasses and so forth. And they are hunted by wild cats and other, animals, and so they're built to defend themselves and to get out of situations where they're being hunted. And so that gives them some unique qualities that also then help in our connection to them. So they're really sensitive to their environment because, again, if you picture a horse in a herd out in the wild, they're in the middle of a field, they have to be really tuned in to any predators that are, sort of milling around looking for lunch. And so they're really tuned into what's going on around them. So when we go into their space, they're very tuned into us. They have some really remarkable vision, and their eyes are set on the side of their head, so they can see almost 360 around them. A typical blind spot is just right here in the middle where their noses are. But they have a great ability to monitor all around them, so they can see a mountain lion back here that might be like kind of thinking about something going on down with their herd. And so again, like they are much more capable to stay in tune with us and what's going on when we're in their space. They have a great sense of smell, and they also have exceptional hearing. Their limbic system also is very powerful, and they are able to tune into and experience emotion. They're very intuitive. And again, all of that sort of ties back into that danger detection that they need to hone so acutely in order to stay alive in the wild. Herd dynamics. Horses live in a herd, and a herd is a very interesting sort of group, sort of operating like a family. The herd works together in a very seamless way. They handle conflicts precisely, and then they're done and they move on. Everybody has their role. There is a pecking order, so there's usually a herd leader. And then everybody sort of has their role and their status within the herd. But one of the things that horses are really good at is partnership, working together. They value that connection that comes from the herd, and they respect each other's unique strengths and weaknesses, and they work together around that. So if you think about just that sort of idea of how a herd operates, if we were able to replicate that in our own human families, think about how much less stress we would have. We wouldn't be arguing with our parents on a regular basis, or our siblings, or our whatevers. Like, there's just a really nice, pure functionality to a horse herd. And so when we use this equine-assisted mental health therapy to work with family members, we talk a lot about herd dynamics and how the horses do it, and how are we doing that in our own human family, and what could we learn from the horses and use to modify our approaches to interacting with each other in a family. So the equine brain, we talked a little bit about the limbic system, and the equine brain itself has a lot of interesting features that also make it the equine more tuned into us as humans. They have an incredible level of touch detection. So they can sense touch even more so than touch lighter than even our fingers can. And, our fingers are pretty sensitive, but a horse's skin is even more so. They can read body language, and they're excellent at it. So that is an area where they're going to understand if we come into a paddock, we're smiling and laughing, but we feel crappy, they're going to know. Because we could try to mask it, but they are picking up on all those teensy tiny subtle cues in our body language that tell them otherwise. So lying to a horse is really difficult. They're a learning machine. They are very intelligent creatures, and they're constantly learning new things from us and from their environment. So all of those pieces together really promotes this sort of brain-to-brain exchange that we experience when we spend time with horses. Any questions thus far? No? Okay. So the electromagnetic field of the equine heart. There is a group of researchers and an institute that formed several years ago to study the impact of the energetic field of the human heart, and they also got into taking a look at the equine heart as well. And so that's called the HeartMath Institute. And I'm going to show you a video about this topic from the HeartMath Institute. But basically, they have found, one, that the human heart has a electromagnetic sort of sphere around it, and they use a magnetometer to actually measure that energy. And for the human body, I think it's like an 8 to 10 foot radius that they can detect that energy from our hearts. However, a horse, the electromagnetic field is projected 5 times that. So that's really like a good amount of space that others can pick up on and exchange that electromagnetic energy with a horse's heart. And so they've found some interesting things happen when people are in the space of a horse and within that electromagnetic field. So I'm just going to show you a little video to highlight some of this.
Did you know that a horse's heart rhythms reflect what they're feeling? And that these same rhythms show how horses can sense the emotional state of nearby humans? Humans have long reported strong emotional bonds with animals. We have heard the statement, horses can sense when you're afraid. But did you know they can also sense when you're feeling uplifting emotions like appreciation? Research conducted by Anne Baldwin and Professor Ellen Gerke, with assistance from the HeartMath Institute, is helping uncover just how this is possible. In the studies, electrocardiogram recorders were placed on the human and horse participants to capture their heart rate variability. HRV is highly sensitive to changes in emotional states. When you're feeling anxious, for instance, your HRV takes on an incoherent pattern. Whereas when you're feeling appreciation, that would be associated with a coherent HRV pattern, which has been shown to have numerous mental, emotional, and physical health benefits. Back on the ranch in the first study, Dr. Gerke sat in a corral with her horse Tonopah, neither touching nor petting him. She practiced a HeartMath technique called heart lock-in, focusing on the feelings of love and appreciation she had for her horse. Researchers expected that Ellen's HRV would take on the coherent pattern we mentioned before, but Tonopah's HRV also shifted to a more coherent pattern, indicating that he was able to sense and respond to the emotional information carried by the energetic field of Ellen's heart. The experiment was replicated successfully with several different human-horse pairs. Interestingly, in a follow-up study, Dr. Baldwin also noticed large increases in both the horse and humans' VLF rhythms during their interactions with each other. This increase did not occur when humans were interacting with other humans, only when they interacted with the horses. VLF is an intrinsic rhythm generated by the heart's intrinsic nervous system, also called the heart brain, and plays a pivotal role in our health and well-being. Reduced VLF has been correlated with an increased risk for major health challenges. Another point of note, horses have naturally high amplitudes of the VLF rhythm. So could this increase in a person's VLF be an indicator of the positive effects the horse may be having on the human?
Let's see. The clicker is failing me. All right, there we go. Okay. So, heart rate variability. They just talked about coherence and increased heart rate variability being essentially a good thing, and something that is tied to general well-being, increased self-regulation. And so this pilot study that they did, separate from the HeartMath Institute, was looking at humans paired, with horses in an arena, and they found a basic correlation between the horse and human heart rate rhythms. So if you think about that, the electromagnetic field, how large it is, and then you're putting a human in that space, and their heart rate rhythms are starting to coordinate with each other. And we, at the farm, we often ask people to just kind of consider that when they're in the space of a horse, and that is, it's a very relaxing and soothing thing to experience. So that is one of the kind of key components that we understand as part of that horse-human bond, that interaction is happening just sort of naturally when we're in their space. The other piece that they mentioned in the study is, we actually can have an impact on the horses as well. So sometimes there's discussions about a horse, being a therapist and mirroring the emotions of the client that's in the paddock with the horses. And there's some, truth to that, in the sense that a person can come into a paddock, into a horse's space, and if they are highly anxious or stressed or angry, the horse is going to absorb that and start to behaviorally, through their nonverbal cues, they're going to start to show that as well. And that's a really powerful thing when you stop and think about it and look at this huge being that is reflecting your own energy back to you. And then as you kind of can get a handle on that, if you're a client that's working on something like that with the horse, as you calm your body, as you increase your heart rate variability, you can see that change happen in the horse as well. So they are a mirror in that sense. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is synchronization of brain patterns. So this is another cool thing that we've discovered that happens between horses and humans when they get together. This study by Cruz and some others looked at the EEG patterns of the horse and the human when they were spending time together. And the hypothesis was that the brain patterns would synchronize, and the results found that both the horse and the human changed from their baseline condition. So increased interaction with the horse led to brain wave patterns and changes that also were mirrored in the horse's brain as well. So just another way in which we have that sort of exchange of energy and impact on each other's biological systems when we're spending time with horses. So that is it for my piece of the discussion, but I'd love to answer any questions that people have, and any further explanation that I can provide. Yeah.
I would imagine the insurance coverage is not very prevalent. That
Correct.
Many companies are not supporting this, and because of a lack of evidence. But what do you think it would take for more insurance agencies to start covering equine therapy?
Yeah, great question. Insurance companies do not cover it, and I started doing this I guess it was 2006. I had a couple of racehorses that had injuries, and I just started kind of tinkering around with it. And back then, there was really nobody, at least in the Northeast, doing anything like this. Over time, we've developed more clear protocols for treatment, and more studies like the ones out of Columbia University showing that there's actual brain changes happening are really the things that are needed. We continue to use that protocol at the farm with our veteran population, and the researchers at Columbia are planning another, round of research, both with veterans and hopefully with children as well, on that protocol. And I think once that really develops and the research comes out and it broadens, I think then hopefully insurance companies will tune into it. But, the financial support for it is a barrier right now. Yes?
This is probably very basic, but understanding the therapeutic value for the process of these wonderful animals. But if you're sad or depressed, and the horse absorbs your emotion, and it's measured in the heart and the brain waves, then how do you change that mood if the horse is reflecting?
Right. Yeah, great question. If the horse is reflecting your sadness or your depression. And so part of what we do is not only acknowledging, okay, this is where you're at, but when you're out in a field interacting with a herd of horses, not every single one of them is going to be tuned into the client in that way. So there's lots of other opportunities for an individual to take a look at how the other horses in the herd are operating and working through challenges, both stress-related challenges and physical challenges. And so there's a lot of teachable moments there, and trying to employ some of those coping skills, some of the mood elevating skills that we teach people. They can do that right in the paddock, and with, let's say, a horse that is reflecting what they're feeling, they'll start to see that sadness lift. So there's a variety of variables that are, that impact the person in that moment, and they don't always leave the paddock feeling great, because sometimes it is a matter of, okay, we're going to come back next time and try, these other things to see what kind of, impact we can have. But it does, help people see the changes that they are making. Yeah.
Do you also work with children on the autism spectrum?
We do work with children on the autism spectrum, and this form of therapy is used commonly with kids with those difficulties. The ability to teach nonverbal cues is really very powerful when you're talking about using horses in that process. It helps kids learn boundaries, it helps them learn communication skills, and it just often is very soothing. And so for children also on the autism spectrum who sometimes find it very difficult to fit in, a horse is a very non-judgmental creature. And so the bonding that happens in the paddock also becomes a really powerful form of acceptance. Yeah?
The studies you referenced are regarding week-long intensives. Is that what your program looks like, or does it vary?
It varies. So we do week-long intensives. The Columbia University model can be used once a week for 8 weeks, and we do that. We also use sort of a more traditional psychotherapy format where we'll meet with an individual for an hour a week for as long as is needed. Sometimes we'll combine that depending on what the person is looking for or working on. We'll do 1 week out in the paddock with the horses, 1 week back in the office to kind of talk about and sift through what happened out in the paddock with the horses, because usually a lot goes on. So it can look like any of those things. Yeah.
I had an assumption about what you were going to talk about. I thought you were going to be talking about horse riding.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just wondered, is horse riding another part of equine therapy? And do you expect to offer that anytime in the future?
Yeah, it's a different, so that's mounted equine-assisted mental health therapy, and that does exist. We don't do that because of our sort of specialty in taking horses that can't be ridden. So I don't know that will be in our future. The other application for the riding version is more commonly used for physical disabilities, or somebody maybe who's had a traumatic brain injury or has issues with muscle tone and strength and so forth. So it has typically more of a rehabilitative approach to it, but there are people that use it also for mental health therapy. As an aside, what I thought you were going to say, and this is a reflection of where the field has come. When I used to talk to people about this 12 years ago or more, they would look at me first like I had 10 heads, and second, why does a horse need a therapist? And that was really the common response. So now it's great that people are thinking like, oh, okay, I've heard about this equine therapy thing, and I know that it's not for the horses specifically, although, horses can have their own mental health struggles. But, yeah. Other questions? Well, we welcome people to come to the farm. If you're ever up for a visit to see what it's really all about, we do schedule tours, and we love for people to know more about what we do and kind of get involved. So please feel free to get in touch if you would like to do that.